Hello, MotoRider World fans, and welcome to this episode of Talking MotoGP. We're going to be talking MotoGP from the latest round, which was held in Malaysia, Sepang. Sorry, I'm a couple of seconds late, and Paul is going to join us. It's my fault. I've literally just looked at the time and sprinted upstairs to get here on, well, not on time, a little bit off time, but playing with the kiddies, and my nephew's over for the day and the night. So, because it's school holidays here again, they just always seem to have school holidays in the UK. It's like midterm break is just a weekly thing. So, Paul will be joining us any second. But for now, Harvey Lowe is in pole position. Woohoo, what a weekend. It was some real downs, but some good ups. And I hope both riders are well and recovering. Bonnie Tats is in second. Evening all. Well done to Alex. Super happy for him. Well done, David Alonso. Don't know if you want to talk the Moto3 crash, but why didn't Rueda see Noah? Not blaming, just can't understand. And it is a talking point, Bonnie Tats. It's become a big talking point. We've spoken about it a couple of times on this show. I know a lot of people have, publicly been out there saying it is unfair that the Moto3 and Moto2 guys don't get the morning warm up. And I think it after this weekend again proves that it's a big safety thing at the end of the day, and they really do need to relook at that and bring the warm up back. But I'm not actually, and I don't know if anyone has further information about it. Like I said, we don't want to get too much into it because of the sensitivity of it all. Obviously we're wishing both riders nothing but the best in their recovery, but it did seem a strange one, what actually happened. But these kind of things happen on the warm-up lap. Sorry, it's, Rueda on the warm-up lap, you're looking and you're warming up, you're getting yourself ready. So a freak accident. Unfortunately, we have seen it a couple of times in MotoGP, and then there's these kind of times when it's when it's the severity of it is a lot worse than other times. So thoughts and prayers with both those riders, there's no doubt about it. I'm going to add to the stage Paul, hello and welcome. Sorry, it's my fault that we're late. I was just saying I've got kiddies and I've got my beautiful little nephew over for the day and the night, so was busy playing something with Nerf guns. I was being shot and had to play dead times and then revived myself somehow. And then all of a sudden, it's 6 o'clock. Kind of threw two kids off me and sprinted upstairs. But thanks for joining me, Paul, as always.
No, only a pleasure, Robin. I hate to break the news to you, but it's actually 8 o'clock. Well, in our part of the world.
Yeah, in your part of the world, it's 8 o'clock. And again, this going back in time in the UK where the clocks change and stuff, it's just the weirdest thing. But anyway, it's my 6 o'clock now instead of the 7 o'clock that it has been for the past X amount of months. And now, so it's just a whirlwind to get in. But thanks for joining me as always, Paul. Appreciate it.
Only a pleasure, Rob. And I just caught you mentioning the crash there, and it is something that needs to be addressed. Exactly what you say. It's a very sensitive thing. Sounds like Rueda's okay. Dittweiler, it sounds like he's a little bit more critical, but seems to be on the mend. Obviously, I think he's got a long road ahead of him. But going back to the point, taking away the warm-ups, give them 5 laps. What's that going to take? 10 minutes, 15 minutes? Surely they can squeeze that in again, because you're quite rightfully, if he had it, he might have had to rebuild his bike from Saturday. We don't know. And then Sunday, the only chance he gets to test it is on their sighting and warm-up lap, So, I think it's something that seriously needs to be addressed. And in all hindsight, probably could have been avoided.
Yeah, there's a lot of comments like this from Colin Kane, because obviously safety is the number one priority when it comes to racing. And I do think the warm-up kind of thing needs to be relooked. As you said, that just even if it's a 10-minute or something, there's got to be something. Colin Kane saying, surely it's time for motorcycle racing to implement a warning light on the rear of the bikes that come on when the bike loses power or is going significantly slower than the other bikes. That's something that definitely could be. I know when in the rain conditions, they've got to have a working tail light that flashes always permanently on or something. So, Colin, that's a good idea. I just looked at the incident, and like I said, I don't want to get too much into it, but it is just one of those freak accidents that you're warming up, and it's easy to say this and this and this and this.
For sure.
It doesn't happen week in, week out, but there are these moments where it does happen, and it can always happen. So it is time to make changes and look at it a little bit more seriously.
It also highlights the dangers of motorsport. If you've seen, there's a camera angle taken from behind the crash, looks like it's from the grandstand. And when you see the impact, it's frightening. You see, then you realize, and I mean, these are Moto3 bikes. Imagine if it's a MotoGP bike that's going I don't know what, 40, 50 Ks an hour faster, weighs an extra 60, 40 kilos, whatever it is. So yeah, just highlights motorsport is dangerous. And to make it safer for everybody's always got to be a priority. But it's also, accidents happen. That's why they're called accidents. And it's not nice to see. Hopefully both riders recover fully. But yeah, just it once again highlights motorsport. And I'm going to say specifically bike racing, because you've got nothing to protect you around you, which you've got in a car. So it makes it very dangerous. And sometimes something like this highlights it.
So I said it is Bonnie Tats that's coming up on YouTube, but it isn't Bonnie. It's actually Yvonne Pretorius. I thought I recognized the profile picture. So Yvonne, you are in pole position, and thank you as always for joining us. There's a question here from Yaku Das. Yaku is also a guy that's always tuning into us and following us on all of our social channels. Evening all. I think the big question for me is looking at the top times compared to 10 years ago. Modern tech has improved by a country mile, but it seems disproportional to the advances in safety. And Paul, before we really dive into the show, I think it's a good topic because it kind of blends into what we're talking about. It's kind of always been a question of, well, not a question, but a concern of mine is it's great that the Michelin tires are getting better, and but at what point does it end? Because we've spoken about it time and time again. These riders get injured, they just want to climb back on, like take my arm back. These guys will just push the limits. There is no limits. There's no limitation for these guys. They will just break through anything. So and that's why I've always said people can climb on the bandwagon and say, "Oh, Michelin, it's crap." I feel sorry for those Michelin technicians because they've got these riders that just want to go faster, turn more, lean further, get on the gas more. There's got to be a limitation at some point on how fast these guys want to go, and a limit that these guys can reach with what's available. But I've always looked at it and gone, right, exactly what Yakudas is saying here. They're going, it's 10 seconds faster than 10 years ago. The Moto 3s are not far off MotoGP times and that. And a lot of the tracks, I'm not necessarily pointing out Sepang as one, but a lot of the circuits have stayed the same. And that's why I'm also glad it's going the way it is in 2027 with the reduced power, and that how much that's going to limit them, I don't know. I saw a comment not so long ago, someone saying that they've already tested the Ducati or the KTM bike, and it's only like a second slower than the current bikes. How much to believe out of that, I don't know. But I don't think it's going to be massively off. But, it's sad that it takes incidents like this for all of us in many ways. We haven't been talking about safety this whole year until now. Now we're talking about it because these kind of things happen, and you go, okay, these kind of conversations, the bikes are a lot faster in all categories. What needs to change? And it's a tough one to actually answer. Loris Capirossi is the head of it, and I saw a comment today coming out where he says, if the track's not safe enough, it's simple. We just do not go there. But I sometimes think it doesn't always work like this. There's the political side of MotoGP and money that sometimes rears its ugly head and takes over. So they've got it spot on until now, but this kind of thing happens, and then we kind of question it all again.
Yeah, and Robert, I don't want to say it's the kind of thing. They've got a safety commission and everyone is looking at it. I'm sure they analyze, but when something like this happens, then suddenly it's brought to the fore once again. I'm just going to go back to, 2022 or 23 with the Frankie Morbidelli crash at Austria. The next year they put in the chicane, slow the track down. So it almost seems like, and thank heavens nobody was killed in that crash. Yeah. But it almost seems like MotoGP safety are they're reactive, not proactive. So when something happens, then they look and say, yes, we better sort this out. When nothing happens, and I'm not for 1 second saying they're burying their head in the sand and pretending it can't happen, but they certainly become very vocal and very visible after a serious incident. Now, I'm sure Loris would be doing the best job because he's an ex-racer. He knows the risks. I just think we need to see, whoever mentioned the comments, the bikes have got so much faster. The grip is so much better. And about the only advancement we've seen in safety is air fences. You look at Mark breaking his collarbone. There was almost probably a 30 centimeter rise in the gravel from the top. Surely the safety commission look at that and say, listen, guys, on Thursday, get your grader, front end loader, whatever, taper this runoff properly. That could have avoided an injury to Mark. Luckily, he had wrapped the championship up, and it could have happened to anyone else. So it just seems to me every now and again they're reactive as opposed to proactive. And how they deal with this, obviously, they've got protocols that they need to look at. But I think that comment is so valid that everything's improved, but safety hasn't. I mean, the riders have got airbags, their helmets are better. Everything is better. But it's still motorcycle racing, and accidents are going to happen. And it's up to the safety commission, people, circuits to try and make it as safe as possible in almost any area that they can.
Paul, you bring it up now, and you look at like Martin in Qatar. What was a crash that, in hindsight, he could have just slid and been fine, but he hit that curb, and that little bump is what kind of caused the problems there. Marc Marquez, as you said. And there was the behind the scenes footage of all of them kind of saying, well, why even put the dirt there?
Yeah.
If we had just slid on tar for another 20, 30 meters, Mark, the Alpine Star suit and everything, these things are built to take a lot more these days. But that little bump is what caused Mark's injury, and touch wood, not injuring Bezzecchi. But had that little ridge not been there, all's good. Pecco Bagnaia was saying after Phillip Island, he went into that left-hander, crashed, and he said, I went straight into a wall. There was no air fence there or anything. I went straight into a wall. So I've banged myself up, but why is there no air fence there? So that's three. And plus this incident now in Sepang, that's 4 incidences that you can really pick out in the space of a couple of months. So it's something we maybe don't talk about enough to highlight it to Capirossi and MotoGP and Dorna and Liberty, whoever does it. But it's certainly, I know the riders have got the safety commission thing or whatever, but you don't hear, certainly from the outside, you don't hear enough about it. What's going to happen in those safety commissions now? I know, speaking to Brad at when I have had the chance to speak to him at races and stuff, he's brought up a couple of comments. We know the whole Kyalami story is that Kyalami, barring the money that's needed to fund the whole thing, first of all, but the safety problems that they've got to be ticked off as a MotoGP track or an F1 track, whatever you want to call it. So only Phillip Island is real grass to be seen. Brian Ritchie. Yeah, a lot of the tracks, even Kota included, they've given all this runoff, which is fantastic, and it's needed, because of the speed of the bikes going into a lot of the corners. They've had to expand the runoff. But then, that Indonesia story is a perfect example. Where Mark crashed and Bez, it's actually a Foss corner. The bikes were doing 180, 200 kilometers an hour, whatever. So if that incident does happen, or if a rider just tucks the front, which a couple did in that scenario, just give them the room. I don't know. Again, I don't know why that gravel pit was there. It was like, you look at Hungary, they went and raced there, and that just threw red flags everywhere. It's like, but how was it passed in the first place? You know what I mean? So I think it is something. I love the words you used, the reactive instead of proactive, and I think it's certainly. And I'm not saying they're doing a complete shit job or crap job, but certainly it can be a lot better. And I think the political side does need to step aside sometimes, and you've got to say, right, the riders come first and this come first. And if it means putting rear lights on the back of bikes or whatever, I don't know what it is, but more things have to happen, because it has reared its ugly head a couple of times, and it did this weekend again.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to jump straight into this comment, Paul. We'll touch upon Richa and Darren maybe later, but it's a topic that's come up, and I want to address it kind of while the questions here from Justin De Vries. One question: does Acosta get better parts than Binder? Surely there can be a way of giving them the same parts and making them more competitive in front. I like Acosta, and I think he can be a force in the front if he gets the right bike. So, Paul, everyone, we touched upon this last week. This is not an argument, but a discussion we've had where Pedro Acosta is the number one rider in that team. There's no doubt about it. KTM have got limited resources, budget, blah, 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 blah. The new parts that come in, Pedro's got 2 bikes that'll need those new parts. And then if he crashes, spares of those new parts. So KTM are just not in this position to fork out enough to have, all 4 of their bikes, which is 8 bikes in total, plus spares. They just don't have the budget to do that. So they've identified Pedro as, right, you're the man to try these parts out in the real world racing situations. Go. If they work, then potentially we can filter them down and manufacture more, and then Brad and them will get them. That's just how it is. Pedro is going to get the number one parts ahead of Brad, Vinales, or Paul Espargaro, in this case, and Bastianini, because he's the number one rider and he's getting the job done fine. What I did notice this past weekend, and I don't know if anyone else or you did, Paul, is one session Pedro would have the fins on the tailpiece, that new Stegosaurus style rear wings that Ducati kind of first introduced, which KTM only came this year, I think, with it. They always had that big kind of trolley handle thing as a wing. Pedro was on and off with that, and then eventually went with the handle, the actual handle style on the back, while Brad and Anaya and Paul still had the Stegosaurus. So I looked at that and went, that's a clear indication of you've got 4 different bikes in many ways, or at least 3 different bikes and one bike of its own, because surely, Brad and Paul and Anaya, if they had the same kind of bike, would be looking at that going, well, if he's running that, I'm going to run that. But looking at that tells me that they can't, because they've obviously got something different where the fins work better. Or do they have enough of those handles? It's a carbon handle on the back. You can imagine KTM affording 6 or 7 or 8 of those, surely. But again, I just painted this picture of where KTM are in terms of, listen, I take my hat off to Pedro again this weekend. He was fantastic. He was mature. He was calm. He was fast. What I love about Pedro is that he throws the rule book out in many ways. You can't ride close because of front tire pressure. You've got to look after your tires. He just goes, bugger it. I'm going to ride this motorcycle as fast as I can. He knows the only way to even have a shot at a top 5 or a podium is just by riding that bike as fast as he possibly can every lap. If the tires fall off, well, then so be it. I was 3rd and I'm now 6th at worst. Whereas starting, or managing in 5th or 6th and then dropping to 10th, 11th. So he's just this all out. So I respect him for that. And how close he rides to people. I just think these riders that complain about front tire pressure when this guy's riding up these other guys' asses. But again, it was just this clear picture painted this weekend of how KTM are just, I think if you had to honestly sit down with Brad at the moment and say, right, what bike are you riding? To be honest, I don't even think he would be able to tell you. I think it would be a mashup of 22, 23, 25, 24. And I think that's the biggest problem again. Yeah, get your thoughts before I dive a little bit deeper into what I saw from Brad this weekend.
No, I fully agree with you, Rob. Funny enough, I didn't pick up on that, so well spotted there. But I mean, KTM always ran, let's call it the shopping trolley handle, the Checker 60/60 handle on the back of their bike. And the Ducatis always ran those fins. So I know they tested them in the beginning of the year, and then everyone went back to the handle. I wonder if it's a case of there's no budget to run the handles, because clearly when you do fall over, that thing sticks out like a sore thumb. So I would imagine it gets broken off. Or possibly could it be a case of the other 3 prefer it? They might find that it works better. I do know 1 or 2 riders have said, like, it was one of the Ducatis. I think Bagnaia, one of those Stegosaurus fins got broken off his bike. He said, I didn't even feel the difference. So how much, is it a mental thing? Is it a budget thing with KTM? Is it a personal choice? But what you and I have discussed on the show many times, Rob, we thought by having 4 riders, they're collecting 4 amounts of data. So now what is happening with KTM? Are they collecting Pedro and 3 others? Or, we don't know that. So I think exactly what you say. KTM right now, yes, they clearly, well, I would imagine they're focusing on Pedro. He's bringing them the results. It's probably the right decision. But the other 3, are they kind of saying to them, well, which you've mentioned, I don't know how many times, well, there's a box of whatever you want. Go help yourself. And if you break that, for whatever reason, find something to replace it. I don't know. That now that you mentioned the fact that they're running different aero on their bikes, that could very well be the problem. And we know budget constraints, we've said it all this year, it has to have an effect somewhere. So this could be part of it. I'm going to say for Brad, thank heavens we're right at the end of the season, because his season just hasn't seemed to kick off by his standards. So he's probably like, yes, 2 more races, and then we can reset. But I think KTM are certainly in a world of pain in terms of where they go. Because, look at, first of all, we know Brad struggles in qualifying. Bastianini struggles in qualifying. How come Bastianini's so good in the race this weekend, but 2 weekends ago he was nowhere? It doesn't make sense to me. And I understand different tracks, different grip levels, temperature. It was very hot on Sunday, but there's no consistency from Bastianini. Brad to a point as well. Yes, we know Brad is a Sunday boy and he can really race. But this weekend, Bastianini was like, well, I'll show you, Oaks, what I can do. Imagine if he had qualified in the first 6, So it's such a dilemma for them. I'd hate to be Aki Aya trying to sort out where they go from here because, they just from week to week, they're actually worse than Bagnaia almost in terms of you don't know what you're going to get.
And that is the biggest frustrating part is you confidently can't go. I mean, Acosta, you can kind of put, your thumb on and go, he's going to be challenging top 5. He's going to be putting in a fast lap. He's going to be doing something. Whereas the other ones, it's a thumbs. It really, you have the positive thought and want to be positive, but it's a complete thumbsuck. Ivan Pilisic makes a good comment here. And I don't know how, I mean, I also saw the social media post with this where apparently Acosta said in one of his debriefs, that he literally got to the point where he just overrode the electronics. He switched everything off and he was riding the bike like that. I don't know if you saw that, Paul.
I heard that on the Oxley Bomb podcast. They mentioned it. And Matt Oxley interviewed him after Sunday. So, or he was in the debrief and he said, definitely. Acosta said, I'm done with this. Just switch everything off and I'll control the bike. And maybe and when he says, switch everything off, what does that actually mean, Rob? You got traction control, anti-wheelie, the ride height device. I don't think it's a case of literally turning a key and switching it off or logging into the computer. I think they minimize it because, they can set the torque, they can set the horsepower for every single corner, for every inch of the track. So when he says that, I would like to have known a little bit more detail, but certainly, which is something that Casey Stoner said years ago when he was still racing, he likes the feel of the throttle to relate to what his backside can feel. Those were his words, and it seems like the top guys, which we've discussed often, that's that connection that they like. When they crack the throttle, whatever that 7th sense is that they've got kicks in then. So maybe that's what Pedro's doing that maybe the other guys don't want to or don't feel comfortable doing.
I mean, we have to be realistic here. It's KTM doing everything they can to obviously develop the bike to go as fast as it can, which Pedro's making it do with his direction. And it's also KTM just, licking as much bum as they possibly can, for the want of another word, to try and keep Pedro Acosta. He was vocal again this weekend going, listen, I can't see Pedro Acosta lasting. If I look at Honda again on the podium just behind him, that Honda package is becoming more, the money's double, triple. I think the security of Honda, I'm not saying that KTM, with Bajaj, but who knows what can happen there. So I think they're doing everything, with all due respect. Pedro is their blue-eyed boy. The other 3, if we lose them, we don't want to, but we've got to do everything we can to Pedro. So it's very much a situation of market Honda. This is the direction we're going. This is our guy, and the other guys, cool, we'll help you and we'll do whatever we can. We want as many KTMs up there as we possibly can, but resources don't allow that. This is the direction we're going. So, and then you've got to be realistic with that. You cannot be naive enough to think that KTM are going to be this. Oh no, don't worry. Okay, cool, Brad. Everyone have the same, and there's not enough toys in the cot for everyone.
No, for sure, absolutely.
And Brett Lawson makes a comment here. I saw a post saying that Brad over the weekend from TNT Sports, Hodgson says Binder has lost his way. After what he saw in the Malaysian GP, what are your feelings on this? So, jumping on to Brad, I've said it, Paul. I'm looking at a rider that knows the limitations of his bike. Is unsure what he actually has underneath him in many ways. The balance is completely wrong. It's just, I think every weekend he goes to, it's just a different feeling. I just think it's this hybrid of a motorcycle that he just can't understand. But again, this weekend, disappointing that Paul Espargaro out-qualified him again. I mean, God, Brad just never got going, even from Friday. At one point, he was 2 seconds off the pace in last. Brad always able to dig deep and find something, but even that something was, another very bad qualifying. Sprint race, just got a good launch, got boxed in turn 1, turn 2, and that sets up your whole race. And after that, he just boxed in the whole race. If you look at his start compared to the Sunday start, where he found 5 or 6 positions, was in a much better position, was able to go. The biggest frustration for me on the Sunday was watching him, and he very quickly got into the back of Marini, and he had Bezzecchi behind him, and he was in that kind of like fight, and he just couldn't pass. He just couldn't do anything. Bastianini just won this lap, Brad, or Bezzecchi, won this lap, Brad, won this lap, Marini, won this lap, I can't remember that, but he just picked them off one by one and then found himself in 7th, whereas Brad just seemed to, he couldn't pass. He just sat there. And someone posted on our Facebook page, and it was at Mario Rademacher. Now, Mario Rademacher, for those who don't know, is a top South African talent from many years ago, GP 250s, I think. He was a top Grand Prix rider. And he's always come to the defense of Brad like us. He'll always support South African riders. And he did make a good point, though. And this was the frustrating part, is that watching Brad there, he wasn't putting himself in a position to overtake, because of the lines that Brad likes to take, or is forced to take by the feeling that he has with his bike, of these wide backing it in. A couple of races ago, when he started to find something, there was a bit more of a direct Brad, making the corners shorter and not backing in as much. This past weekend, it almost looked like it was that loose Brad again of, still going into the corner with the bike trying to settle itself. So he's going to waiting for the bike. Okay, are you fine? Can I turn in? Okay, now I can turn in. But by then, you've already had 3 bikes turn in and go,
Yeah.
And then Mario Rademacher put it perfectly. It just didn't look like he ever had the lines to kind of put himself in that position to pass. If you look at Pedro Acosta, he could still turn that. The KTM's always been a stubborn motorbike. It can't turn on a dime. Although Pedro Acosta's still able to do these tight lines. He turns in early. He passed Bagnaia. Okay, Bagnaia, we know, had the tire issue, but still he was able to pull it tight, get on the inside, get the bike stopped, and in and go. And that was very frustrating to watch, how Bastianini could make it work in many ways. Pedro Acosta made it work to the podium, and Brad had the pace, but just couldn't do anything with it. He just had to sit there and sit behind this Honda, even with all that horsepower, that horsepower advantage that he's got means nothing, because he just couldn't get the thing to turn. And it just looked like a much harder, that turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, it looked like Brad was adding on 500 meters of circuit, wrestling the bike again. And it was a hard watch this weekend. So, there's nothing else to say there.
Really. Yeah, absolutely, Rob. One thing I'm going to say, which we mustn't forget as well, you also, in any sport, you can have a bad day. And that's what I thought for this weekend when Bastianini passed Brad, passed Marini, as you say, Bezzecchi first, and then he disappeared. What did he finish? 3.5 seconds up the road on Brad.
Mm-hmm.
Brad didn't look comfortable. I think he's got a very similar mindset at the moment to Bagnaia, where so far, you've said it many times, so far and no further, but I'm not confident. I just can't do what I know I can do, and I'm not prepared to crash. So I just think that, but I also felt in my head, just a bad weekend for Brad, and everyone has it. You have it as a soccer player, you have it as a cyclist, as a golfer, everyone and I just felt maybe this weekend was his really off day. He just, well, for whatever reason, and I don't know, I got no idea if that's what it was, but it looked like that to me, especially because once Bastianini passed him, I thought, well, he'll just latch on here and same bike, same everything, off they'll go. And he just couldn't do it. And like you said, Brad normally is renowned for overtaking. And, to not get past Marini, no disrespect to Marini, he's having a great season. But with the extra, I don't know what the KTM's got, 15 k's an hour on speed. And there's 2 fast straights there. You would have thought Brad would have just sailed past and disappeared. Didn't happen. So, definitely he's in a difficult situation at the moment. And I think part of it is mental. Like you said, as he got to that point where, I know the limit of this bike and no more. So, and since we think he's had that attitude, remember the beginning of the year, he was crashing quite a lot. Yeah. Subsequent to that, he hasn't crashed. He crashed last week in the sprint race, but now he looks, I'm not going to say he looks solid. He looks like he's got everything under control. He hasn't got the pace to go with the Pedro Acosta, but he's like, okay, well, if we get an 8th or 9th, so be it.
Mm. It was a very hard watch. Exactly like what you said, that mental game comes into it. I think the comparison to Pecco is the right one to make. they know how to ride a motorcycle fast. Pecco again this weekend, something just clicked, and the sprint race everything was solved again. Again, it was the perfect idea, situation, pole position, which he did so well to get, coming from Q1, found something, was able to put the pace in, and then the sprint race, got out front, had no one around him bothering him, and he could go and win the race. Sunday race, we all know what happened, and we'll talk about it with the Michelin tire. But Brad's got to this point where, as you said, footballers, top sportsmen get into it. A footballer like David Beckham, or they don't forget how to kick a ball or shoot a ball. But on some days, it comes naturally, and you just do it without even thinking, and you get it spot on. And there's days where you get it, and now the confidence is low, and you go, okay, right, don't screw this up. What's it going to do? Or no, the wind's, you're starting to overthink factors, and then you're rooted in the wrong place. And I think it has to be where Brad is, because coming from the couple of seasons that he did, he hasn't won races in a long time and hasn't been as competitive as maybe he should have been, but he was always top 4, top 5 in the championship. He always had that to fall back on, top KTM rider. This year he's had none of that to kind of fall back on. And these guys analyze everything. So Brad's looking at championship, miles down. He's looking at sector. He's looking at everything. And when you're always off, it's got to pay a toll on you. Absolutely. You know what I mean? So I agree with you in the sentiment of, I think this weekend that all just came onto Brad, and it looked like there was a rider there that just had all of it on top of him, and he was like, they've also been away for 5 weeks, out of their comfort zone, hotel to airport to rent a car. I think Brad was one of the couple of riders that went, I just cannot wait to get home. I want to see my wife. I want to see my kid. I just want my comfort zone. I'm a comfort zone guy. I need my comfort zone to reset. I'm hoping Portimao is going to be something. It's a track that, the KTMs have been competitive at in years gone by. It's a tricky circuit, but I think what we have to do as South Africans at the moment is curb our expectations. We've got to realize that Brad is not on the competitive package that he needs to be on. Yes, he's in a factory KTM ride, which has still got its flair to it. But the reality is he's not on the Pedro Costa factory ride. And I mean this with all due respect. Even if he was, someone mentioned the comment here earlier where Neil Hodgson said, Brad and the other KTM riders, they're in the same problem that Pecco is in. You're trying to go fast, and you've got another rider or a rider going fast. So instead of doing your thing, you're always comparing yourself to that data. And you're always trying to make these tweaks. So every single time you come in and go out, you're changing something. And I go back to Silverstone, where Marquez came out and said, eventually, after you've done so many changes, it's got to point back to one thing, and it's the rider. So you've got to reset, find something, and then just build with that as a rider. Change yourself, change something. And I think that's where the likes of, Brad, Anaya, I'm not going to use Paul as an example because he's just, a full-in rider. That's where they've gotten to. And that's where Pecco Bagnaia is because you're analyzing yourself against that rather than just analyzing yourself. And but again, it's easy to say that where Brad's in this position of, right, I need this, and maybe KTM just can't give it to him compared to what they can give Pedro.
And not only that, Rob, as you say, you go to the box, the first thing they do, we've seen it on TV, they all do it. They look at the timing screens, and the first thing they're looking for is, where's my teammate? He's third, I'm 10th, or he's third, I'm whatever. That also gets into your head. I don't care how strong you are mentally. When you've beaten every other teammate you've had for the 5 years you've been a factory rider, and now you've got this guy and he's giving you a proper hiding. It gets to you. Exactly what you say. Now, do you try his settings? Do you try his? So you're a very difficult situation to be in. And as we've mentioned a billion times, the fact that they may be tight on budget doesn't make their situation any easier. So they really, they're in a tough place at the moment. And, hopefully things turn around for the whole team, not just, obviously we want Brad back at the front or fighting in the, better positions, but you want the whole team to do well. We've said it many times. We want everyone to be competitive. It makes it better to watch. So,
good comment here from Trenton Rue. 2027 couldn't come soon enough. There is too much in the machine and less emphasis on the rider. Can't be up there and next race be nowhere. That doesn't full seats. Unfortunately, it's been a struggle to follow this season. And Trenton,
Yeah.
yeah, I agree with you. You know, as a diehard fan, I'll always look at the positives and always, watch MotoGP regardless, because I like the personalities and everything involved. But I agree, as you said, it's tough to watch some of the inconsistencies and this bike's going to work at this track because of the conditions there. And last week, Paul, we were saying, and I saw like the whole internet, everyone commented, everyone did podcasts on it. Is Aprilia now the new best MotoGP bike?
Yeah.
A week later,
yeah,
Bezzecchi's riding around in 9th and 10th place. Raul Fernandez, who dominated at Phillip Island, was crashing out in 14th and 15th. So it is. You look at that and you go, my God, it's like, how do you put your finger on this? The Ducati dominance. Up until Saturday, the Friday, Ducati were nowhere in Malaysia. And I was like, what the hell's happened here? And all of a sudden, three Ducatis on the front row, and you go, okay, well, this is making a bit more sense. But exactly what Ken said, I think all of this is just, it is up in the air, and I am excited for 2027 to come. I'm a bit worried, obviously, for the likes of Brad, contract-wise, and what's going to happen there. But I think it is going to be a nice reset in many ways, and we can really, it's going to be nice going into every weekend going, okay, well, what's going to happen now? Because in some ways and got into that, I don't want to say comfort zone, but it's got into this bit of a, not a stalemate, but that, whereas 2027 is definitely going to reset things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to laugh at what you said, because that's exactly what I thought, especially when Agura passed Bezzecchi, and you're like, this is a Oak who's he's still half injured, and last week we've been singing his praises, Bez, that is, and he's really done himself proud, no doubt. And then this weekend, for whatever reason, nothing gels for all of them. It wasn't just him, it was the Aprilias in general. So I think it also shows how, I'm going to use the word fickle. It's probably not the right word, but it just shows how temperamental is probably a better word. These bikes are, if you get it a fraction wrong, and remember, Rob, we've said it 100 times, we're talking 0.2 of a second. It's not like we're talking 3 seconds a lap. You get it, they're so temperamental, you get that, whatever that is, and they couldn't pinpoint it, Aprilia, on the weekend, but you get that wrong, and you end up in 10th. That also shows it's very competitive, but it's not as easy as, why don't you just, move the swing arm pivot? Why don't you just do X, Y, and draw, harder forks, softer forks? It's not that simple. So it's become it's a challenge for everyone. And I think this weekend was a perfect example of that, where, as we say, the Aprilia, we've been singing their praises, and this weekend suddenly nothing, absolutely nothing from them.
Ansley, love the comment there. I've put it on the screen for everyone to read about Brad. As a Stern supporter, I fully agree. Carl, Butch James, also, good comment to make. Brad, without the same package as Acosta, just does not have the same confidence. He needs to finish top 5. We know Brad can do it, and exactly what we've kind of spoken about. So, I mean, we don't need to go on about it forever. What I will say is James Dent, our good mate, was in Sepang again this past weekend, and he said, Rob, Brad, after the race, came to me and he said, you should have seen the guy's arms from the stones that get flicked off that Sepang circuit. He said, Brad, it looked like he had been, in a paintball kind of war. He was just rashed and that's through leathers, like through those thick leathers. He wears an undersuit and everything, so he just said the riding conditions in Malaysia, he said it was 41 degrees. He was sweating like a piece of cheese on a windowsill. There was no hiding from. He said it was. He takes his hat off to all those riders, because it was absolutely brutal, those conditions. So just a nice little bit of behind the scenes, the kind of stuff. That's the kind of stuff. Brad's never going to be that kind of person, but I love to see that kind of stuff. The first thing I would do is on social media, like, check out my mentality. And whatever, give that little bit of insight and background. But I think Pedro Acosta does it well as well, whenever he's got the calluses and blisters, and he's like, I'm holding on enough. But anyway, we can put the rest to the KTM story there. It is, I think Van Erasmus said earlier, we've been talking about the same story with KTM for 3 years now, and that's the frustrating point, and that's the point where Pedro Acosta's got to be real with himself. If anything, Marc Marquez proved that loyalty, it gets you a long way. There's no doubt about it. But, Fabio Quartararo this weekend was kind of saying, well, I hop on that V4 at the test and it's not where I need it to be. I've got to get to the point now where I've jumped ship. I've made my money. It's not about money now. It's if I want to go win another title. So this is where Pedro Acosta's got it. Pedro Acosta, especially over the last couple of months and what's happened, he's sitting there going, I'm a better rider than Raul Fernandez. He's won a Grand Prix. I'm a better rider than Fermin Aldeguer. He's won a Grand Prix. I'm a better rider than Di Antonio. He's won a Grand Prix. And what's the difference? And this is the same thought pattern Brad's got to go through, the same thought pattern that Enea Bastianini, I think, is still going through. You know, there was talks he was going to sue KTM for stalling his career and making him sign the contract under false pretenses, which in some way, you know, there's validity there. So there's all, but Pedro Acosta, I think, is the biggest question mark for me going forward. Is what does he do? Does he wait until 2027 and then go Honda, or does he make the move next year, buy himself out of the KTM contract and get himself on a Honda? Well, it's going to be hard now because all the Honda spots are taken. So, but anyway, I don't know. I can't see KTM improving much because of where it is. You're not going to go throw billions at it, as we spoke about last week, because nothing's going to change next year. The rules are the same. You can't do that much. There's all these fees. You're focusing on 2027 unless they have this almighty package, 2027 package that they can promise Pedro that's going to be competitive and somehow keep him, which I don't know how that's going to do. Sticky Wiggy Acosta is moving 100% at the end of his contract. He said he wants to be on a Ducati. Ducati are going to have to build a lot of bikes because I think it's going to be a Ducati and a Aprilia Cup. Well, although I must give credit to Honda. And jumping ship quickly into the next conversation, Paul, you mentioned Luca Marini earlier and what a great job he's done. What a shit rider, eh? How do you crash?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Noak hasn't crashed the whole year, and then he falls over with a commentator. I mean, that was disappointing.
The slowest speed crash he's ever going to have in his whole life. Yeah, with a commentator. I mean, what a way to pick up your first crash of the season. It's just like, you're going to do it in style, and that was just not the way to do it. But anyway, the Honda story, Marini, consistent again, showing good progress, good development, no doubt about that. Joan Mir, I want to talk about because I felt for him in the sprint race, but you could see that he just had this burst of energy. This adrenaline just got into him. He was sliding the bike. He was just, he really looked good. And I was like, okay, this is fantastic. And then also just a slow, low side kind of thing. But I was happy to see him put it on the podium in the main race. A little bit fortunate with Pecco Bagnaia in the tire. We don't really know what will happen there, but you cannot fault the progress that Honda have made. You know, it was doom and gloom at the beginning. It was doom and gloom 5 months ago, and they really have turned it around. Zarco is still Zarco was great Friday, great Saturday. Didn't pull it off on Sunday for some reason. But certainly Honda as a whole stepped it up big time. And this is why the likes of Pedro Acosta are looking at this going, I've got to take this seriously.
Yes and no, Rob. I agree and I disagree at the same time. I'm hoping, and you know me, I'm a Honda guy. So I was delighted. First of all, for Joan Mir, because he's not my favorite rider, but no one wants to see a rider, previous world champion, a guy who's very good. You don't want to see that crashing week in and week out, because that means he's overriding the bike. You know, one crash every 4 races, it happens. But when it's every single week, then either he's riding incorrectly or he's riding over the limit. So I'm going to say, because of his talent, he's riding over the limit of what the bike can do. So this weekend was a great weekend. We had the Hondas, consistently the 3 of them, and we leave Chantra out of the equation, basically. The 3 of them, Zarco, Marini, and Mir, always in the top 10 or thereabouts. I'm hoping it's not the exact opposite of Aprilia, where this was just a weekend where, so for Honda, everything worked here, where for Aprilia, nothing seemed to work. So let's see in 2 weeks' time in Portimao. I think, if anything, it will have given them a huge boost. So I hope Mir doesn't get there and have a good Friday and Saturday and then think, well, I'm going to win the race and dump it. Marini will be his consistent self-run. If the bike is good, he'll be 5th, 6th, or 7th. Zarco needs to now go back to where he was at the beginning of the year. I still think Zarco is the fastest of those 3 Honda riders. But he just hasn't, we said it last week, he's been in no man's land again. But I think the confidence that Joan Mir will have now might just benefits the whole team. And the whole team is Honda. As much as they're the factory team, I think it is a very tight-knit family. That's what it looks like, where between Cecchinello and Alberto Pucci, it seems like they all aiming in the right direction. I know Zarco said, listen, this new upgrades that they've done don't quite suit him yet, but he hasn't turned around and said, no, I'm not going to, I'm not doing this. So I think they're certainly on the right trajectory. And saying that, if that is the case, it's a big draw card. Remember, we've got Jorge Martin out at the moment. Honda were courting him big time.
Yeah.
And we've got Pedro Acosta. So this story of Acosta just going straight to Honda, and look, if it was me as someone signing the checks, I would put Acosta 5 leagues ahead of Martin at the moment. But it's going to be very interesting to see where that goes. But I certainly think Honda at the moment they've improved the most. As much as Aprilia being good, Aprilia were way better than Honda last year. So I think you get the rider of the race. I think the manufacturer of this past weekend, even though they didn't do as well as they might have expected, to get a podium with Mir and Marini right there, I think it was a good weekend for them.
Yeah, agreed. Yakudas, we're going to just touch upon it while you've mentioned Jorge Martin. There's where will Martin go in 2027? If Bez beats him consistently in 26, he will bolt. This is my concern now with Martin, and you can maybe throw Marc Marquez into the equation, and I'm going to ask a question about Marc Marquez that we can just get an answer, and then we'll move on. But speaking about Martin, it's a tricky one now because he seemed, and I hope I'm wrong, but it seems like he's in this. He's going to have this Danny Pedrosa problem now, where every time you crash, you're going to hurt yourself, and that's going to just limit you now. Okay, he's lucky enough, or he went on to win a world championship. Danny Pedrosa just missed out purely on the fact that he just couldn't stay fit for a full season long enough, or he got taken out and broke collarbones or whatever. But Martin seems to be this, crash and get hurt, crash and get hurt, crash and get hurt. And which is why I think he's taking this extended time now. The team came out today saying he won't be at Portimao, which is only next week still, so it's another 2 weeks of rehab. So I think he's really giving himself the time. It's a very good question. I honestly can see Pedro Acosta and Jorge Martin being the two big targets for Honda. In my mind, we know it floated around kind of last year or this year, even already, when the Martin talk of he wants to leave Aprilia and stuff. I don't know if Aprilia, yes, they kind of patched things up and put a plaster over what happened this season. Yeah, it can't carry on for you. The wound will still, the scar will still remain there. So I think if Martin can jump, I think he will jump to a Honda or something and make bigger money. Not necessarily go for the race winning bike or the championship winning bike. I think he's won the championship now. It's about making some money and still being competitive, of course. My big question for you and everyone here regarding Marc is, I looked at it again now. Marc's made the decision to sit out the rest of the season, and I think this is something that Maverick Vinales took lightly when it comes to the shoulder injury. Sounds like it's a similar, in some ways, Maverick and Marc's injury, and Maverick tried to come back too soon and said it was a waste of time. The guy, he couldn't ride a motorbike to what he needed to at MotoGP level. If you're not there at least 98%, you're wasting your time. Yeah, absolutely. And I think Marc's record now, Marc's learned from the mistakes in the past. Marc's got the luxury of titles wrapped up. He can make that decision. It's got to impact somewhere because Ducati are losing massive marketing. MotoGP is losing massive marketing. A lot of people bought tickets to come watch Marc Marquez in bright red go do what he does. My question is now, with I don't want to say the frailty of Marc, but Marc's getting to an age where you don't bounce as well, you crash, you hurt yourself, recovering from these I don't think you ever 100% recover from those kind of injuries and the underlying injuries that he's got. Can you see a situation where Marc is literally going to try and get to number 10 and then call it? Or Marc's just going to go until the point where he goes, okay, right, now I'm really out. Because I looked at this decision in particular and I thought, this guy has been through a lot. This guy has been through a lot. He's been racing in that championship, and this was where you have to take your head off to Rossi and put him at the top of the list, that he could do it for as long as he did. But I don't know if we'll ever see that again with the demands of modern day MotoGP. And I'm not saying that Rossi didn't go through those demands, but those demands have just gone up a level. I look at that decision and I go, how much more energy does Marc have? That Marc energy, the energy that Marc lives at, which is just here all the time. I could see a story where it's right. I get number 10 next year and cool. I can really consider, or I could see a Marc going, right, number 10, I'm the man. I've beaten the VR46 record. Goodbye. So yeah, answers on a postcard, please. You, Paul, and everyone in the comments.
Yeah, Rob, I think you make such a valid point there. Personal opinion, I don't think beating the VR46 record has anything to do with him. He's a driven man. He wants to do what he believes he can do, prove to himself before he proves to anyone else. I think you 100% spot on. This injury has brought back a lot of nightmares from the last 4 years, exclude this year and last year. So he's had 4 horrific years. I don't think he'd want to go through that again. He's achieved his goal this year. I firmly believe he's going to come back 1st of January 2026, give it 100%. If he remains uninjured, I think he'll re-sign with Ducati or whomever it is. He'll sign another 2 years, which will make him 35 at the end of 2028. If he has 1 or 2 scares where there's injury problems or he doesn't feel 100%, I agree with you. I think end of the year, next year, he'll just say, if he wins the 10th, he'll just say, thank you, guys. I've done what I came to do. Remember me, and I'm out of here. I honestly think, he was ready to do that 18 months or 25 months ago. But his personal drive wouldn't allow him. He wanted to prove to himself. Now he's done that, So how much extra has he got in him now that he's realized, listen, I'm fallible. I can get injured. Things can go wrong, even though it wasn't my fault. So very valid point. No one will be able to answer that question. I think midway through next year, we'll have a definitive answer. If he's dominating, and like we said earlier in this year, he was winning at 96% of his ability. If he's doing the same thing next year, sad luck for everyone else. If he's winning at 105% and a Bagnaia and a Bezecchi and a Binder and an Acosta are giving him a hard time week in and week out, we might see a different mental approach from him during the year, and then end of the year, enough. Walk away while you're still healthy. That's not a bad thing. He's achieved so much. Everyone will remember him. It's not like he's going to be and no disrespect, anyone who just gets forgotten in the crowd. That'll never be Marc Marquez.
Yeah, as Ivan Pilicic says, the comment that he made after the winning this championship, saying, I feel at peace, was a big comment to make, because it was kind of like almost deflated. And this kind of decision backs that up. Is like, okay, well, I don't have that, or I don't need to be that flat out, climb on this bike if my one arm's hanging off kind of mentality. Yeah. I agree with what you're saying. I do disagree. And the fact, I think it's purely to go out and beat Rossi's number 10, as Olimoto states as well. I think he's that driven that he wants to be the record books. There's still a lot of wins he can get next year. That'll close in the win records, the pole positions. I think he's driven by stats, driven by the numbers. But I think just living at that Marc Marquez level, it can't be. And this is the time that it impacts you most, when you're lying at home with your arms strapped up again, and little things like putting your socks on and going to the shower and wanting to fondle yourself, and just like the simple things in life aren't as easy as they used to be now. That's when you sit and you go. It's the same with Martin. You sit and then go, okay, well, this is fine, but geez, Marquez is in a different situation, because he's sitting there going, the money's in the bank. 9 world titles. Okay, I do think there's number 10, but I think that number 10 is the sole motivating factor. Otherwise, he could just sit there and go, well, I've got everything else. Every box is ticked. I'm out of here.
Yeah. I think one of the differences, Rob, he's the benchmark currently. So he says, well, yes, I got injured. It wasn't my fault. I got taken out, but it was actually coming quite easy to me. If you think of a guy like Martin, he's thinking to himself, geez, I've got to beat that guy, and I'm not feeling great at the moment. Or, I'm talking about the injured guys who are making comebacks. And I like to use Martin as my example, purely because of what he said at the end of last year. I've achieved my life's ambition, my life's goal. Mark's never turned around and said that. I don't ever remember Rossi saying that. A guy like Mick Doohan wouldn't say that. They said, okay, I've won this one, I want to win the next one. And that also, that's all part of this mental fortitude, strength, whatever it is. So, I think there'll be, I think, as I say, if Mark comes back and we know he's going to be injury-free, because he's not going to try to do anything stupid like he did after his crash 5-6 years ago. So by next year, he'll be at, as you say, you never recover fully, but he'll be at 97, 98, 99%. It won't affect him. it will affect him in terms of how easy the racing comes. And like I say, if it's as easy, and I say that with all due respect, he did make it look easy at times. If it's the same next year, I think we'll see more of him. If not, I think he'll look at his decisions more circumspect and say, you know, what else do I want to achieve? Wins, yes, I think he'll go for that. Championships, yeah, time will tell. He's certainly going to be the benchmark again. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, I think you've pointed it out perfectly. There's when Martin comes back, even if he's 100%, he's got to ride at 100% to be competitive. And this year has proved that even at 100%, I'm still finishing 5th, 6th. You know, Martin hasn't got on the podium yet. Whereas Mark, you said earlier, you know, was winning races this year at 96%. So with that in his mind, that is the draw card to bring him back. Going right, I'm not at this 110% killing myself week in, week out to win these races and win this championship. So yeah, I fully agree with you. I've never looked at it like that, as that being the driving factor of coming back. But I still do think the big decision will be, even if he is still at a level where he's competing and winning at 96%, when that number 10's in the bag, it's like, okay, I'm 30, you know, by then he'll be what, 33, 34, 32, I forget how old or whatever he is. You know, you've got your girlfriend, your life can start happening, you know, and he's been doing it for a long time. So it's going to be interesting to see where the thought process and what Mark comes back. You kind of know the answer, the personality that Mark, he's going to come back flying out of the box next year and still be the man to beat. There's no doubt about that. But you know, has something just chinked, you know, has this, again, this injury, has it just tweaked something, you know, is it going to slow him down just enough that the others can have a bit more of a say, you know? We're going to have to wait and see how it is. Regarding the Bulliger testing, Bulliger will be testing. I really want that test to work out. I was hoping he was going to rock up in Sepang, but realistically, it was a stupid thing. Give the guy a test, which he's going to test at Jerez now. Hopefully that goes well, because I would love to see Bulliger in Portimao and Valencia, the last 2 rounds, replacing Mark. No disrespect to Pirro, but she's riding around at the back, you know. If I look at that exercise as well, same with Savadori in many ways at Aprilia, it's like, has that come to an end, you know, their development time? If you look at Honda, what's really refreshed them as well with the riders, what they're doing is Aleix Spargro's input, that refresh there, and taking nothing away from Danny Pedrosa at KTM. But, you know, we've spoken about it. To change, sometimes you need to make a change, and that different input and whatever. Now, there's not these fast, amazing test riders just hanging around. I know that. But I look at Michele Pirro and I go, okay, yes, you should be at least beating Chantra, you know. No disrespect, but you should, and he's just nowhere. So I'm hoping Bulliger could climb on there. It will be a great exercise. Let's not forget he's going, or has signed to be, a test rider for Ducati next year. Speaking of the change, that is the change. So it'll just be a great exercise to see, because also, you know, you can kind of in some way look at, you know, how Toprak's going to maybe fit in. I know it's not really the same because of Ducati and Yamaha and whatever, but Bulliger was Toprak's main rival in World Superbikes this year. If Bulliger climbs in and finishes stone last where Pirro's finishing, you kind of going, this is not a good year. I remember Bautista a couple of years when he was dominating World Superbikes. Okay, he was injured, but he came into MotoGP and he finished nowhere. And everyone was kind of saying, you see, there's such a massive thing between World Superbikes and an end. But I really hope it'll be great to see Bulliger climb in there and just see where he ends up.
Yeah, absolutely. I also sincerely hope that it happens and that he gets to replace Mark in Portimao and the last race of the year.
So, Paul, let's jump on to this crazy. I mean, we haven't really known what to say for the last couple of chats, but Pecco Bagnaia climbs into Sepang Friday. Okay, all the Ducati scratching their heads, like going, "Oh my God, you know what's going on here?" And I've already watched the kind of the behind the scenes Ducati show from not from Sepang but from Indonesia, and that certainly, and you know, and Pecco and his team were just scratching their heads, you know. What I did see this weekend, okay, we saw the good and the bad of Pecco. The bad side, the Friday not getting it right, the weaving, and anyway, something wasn't there. Saturday it all clicks, and Pecco, the real Pecco, it shows why you have got to respect this guy, why you can't just write this guy off, and why we have frustrations as fans and pundits and everything, because we know that guy lives there somewhere, and it just
Yeah.
itself more. So you go Q1, fastest time, pole position. Pecco Bagnaia, you beauty, well done. Problem solved. Goes sprint race, dominates, problem solved. Life makes sense again. Sunday race, competitive. Michelin Rietou, we'll talk about that now. But what I did pull from it, and before we really dive into the whole thing, what I did pull from it, I don't know if you saw, it was in some of the behind the scenes stuff, is when he came in back to the box after the sprint race, Gigi came in and Pecco went, I didn't see you at the winner's circle thing, like kind of tongue in cheek, like, I didn't see you there. And Gigi was like, no, I had work to do, but well done anyway. And he was like, I work to do. That's nice.
Yeah.
And then I saw, like, even when Pecco was celebrating with his team, he celebrated, and then Tardozzi's there. Everyone else got this massive high five and a hug, and Tardozzi kind of got this, well, you could have my pinky.
Yeah.
Like, there you. So we've spoken about, and it had to happen because of what's happened this season. But I really did see that kind of that little bit of a disconnect between Pecco and these decision makers within the Ducati group, which kind of lends itself to surely that relationship's not going to last come 2027.
Yeah, Rob, we've discussed it, and I think it was definitely last week or the 2 races ago where whatever happened to Pecco, and you just saw what's the right word? The disappointment's not the right word. They're like, for goodness sake, from Gigi Dall'Igna. And unfortunately for everybody, so Pecco, Dall'Igna, Tardozzi, and us as spectators and fans, the cameras are there. We see the emotion. And as much as Pecco might not have seen it there, someone's going to say to me, yeah, check what he did when you did X. So I think that relationship, I think there's a definite crack. Whether it's fractured or not, I don't know. But certainly that wedge is there. And it doesn't bode well, specifically, obviously, for Pecco. But we've discussed it, and maybe it is time. And I'm not saying, I think he had a great weekend, barring Friday morning. Friday afternoon he was, well, I didn't make top 10, but then Saturday qualifying fastest in Q1, straight into Q2, pole position, great sprint race. Did he have issues in the main race? Because, Alex passed him early and then Pedro passed him. I think Pedro realized there might have been a problem. Yes. But or was it Bagnaia now getting in the dogfight, which you and I have said, especially you, and you picked it up long ago. As soon as people overtake him, he almost becomes fearful. Had that started and then the puncture occurred, I don't know. But anyway, so I think that Ducati factory relationship, he's definitely looking in that contract if there's a way to get out of it, not necessarily for next year. We still agree, move into VR46, swap him with Digi, and life will be good for him. He'll be on the same bike. I just don't know when that happens, when your big boss is now showing clear disregard for you. And he's Italian and you're Italian. I could understand if one was Spanish, one was Italian or whatever, but this is your glory boy. And suddenly it seems like now it's not even your boy, never mind your glory boy. I think it's a problem, and we'll see what happens in Portimao. But I certainly, we've discussed it, Rob. I think the parting of ways is almost inevitable, but it might take another season with Ducati before that happens. We'll have to see how that pans out.
What got me with the Sunday race with Pecco Bagnaia is, and Harvey Lowe is asking, when are we going to talk about Alex? We are going to give Alex his time in the spotlight straight after this because he deserves it. So let's just end this topic off with Pecco. Soft was clearly the tire to be on for the pace. The medium had no feeling. You just had no feeling with it. And the Pedro Costas went with it on the Sunday. I try to look now. Does anyone know what Alex Marquez won the race on Sunday with? Was it medium soft or was it soft?
No, soft.
So
I think Pecco was about the only one who went on the medium.
I know, and this is where the mental side comes into it. You're second guessing. You're second guessing yourself. Now, Pecco, I watch each and every one of those behind the scenes things, and he has never had one. No MotoGP rider on this grid has had anything nice to say about this medium tire ever. And then he goes and puts the medium tire on.
Yeah.
So why make that decision? Rather put yourself in the fight with soft, which you put it on pole position with, you dominated the sprint race with, works. Why go throw this curveball in of a medium?
Yeah.
Alex Marquez, he's won in the sprint race there before. He's always had a great record at Sepang. He was your closest rival on Saturday. Why try and be clever in that situation? Peter Ward, thank you so much. Soft Alex was. Why try and be clever in that situation? Why, you know what I mean? It's almost finding a way to handicap yourself. So I looked at that and I went, Pecco, that was stupid. Like, that was a stupid decision to make when 90% of the field and probably every Michelin guy is telling you, go soft, it'll last. And you're going, no, it won't. That's purely, and that's when that's a sign of a guy that's second guessing, and that's a confidence thing. A Mark or anyone else would have gone soft. What's Alex on? Soft. Cool. Alex is the reference. Cool. When you're the reference, just stick with it. And so that was the one big disappointing thing. Sunday, we know it was a tire thing with a puncture and everything that really halted his race. But before that even happened, I went, why is this guy on a medium tire? He's always complaining about the medium tire. No one likes his medium tire, and he puts his medium tire on. After you've dominated, you finally found your confidence. This is where I take my head off to Pedro Acosta. He puts himself in this and he says, this is going to give me the best opportunity to be there, and I'll manage the shit when it happens. I'll manage the when it happens. But let me just get myself there. And that's what he did, and he paid off. He finished second in the race. You know what I mean? So that was the one disappointing thing from Pecco. But again, it was great to see Pecco fast again. We need that fast Pecco. We need that championship-winning Pecco, because can you imagine if we had that Pecco throughout the season? What a different picture that would have painted against Marc Marquez. And I'm not saying Ducati are fully innocent in this whole thing. I'm not. But I still, as a Pecco fan, lean more towards the side of Pecco. You've let yourself down in many ways this season. Again, with that Sunday decision, I went, Pecco, that's you. That's you. And if your team are forcing that on you, don't let them. You say, this is how it's going. This is what I'm doing. I don't care what you say. So let's hope that changes. We're going to Portimao now. Yes, that's a tricky one. I can't put my thumb on anyone at Portimao. I think Wayne Taylor said Acosta will be good at Portimao. I think it's good. He's got nothing to lose. Pecco's still looking at championship and third, and Bez is still trying to chase third, and so there's a couple of factors in there. But overall, I just look at it and I just think, geez, Pecco, you were on the right path there, and you kind of put yourself 10 steps backwards again.
Yeah, Rob, and you know what he's doing? He's giving us self-doubt in him. Where last year we sung his praises. Every time Martin or Mark beat him last year, he could up his game. Yes, he didn't win the championship because he had 11 crashes, but he could certainly up his game. And you never got to a weekend last weekend wondering whether Pecco was going to be first or last. This year, and specifically from after their summer break, so kind of 6 races ago, you just don't know. In fact, you're quite shocked if you even see him in the first 5 or 6. And it's really disappointing for a rider of his mental fortitude, which is what he showed last year and the 2 years previous, that he could rise above all the dramas. This year, he just hasn't been able to. Whatever the reasons, I don't know. 2 races to go, same situation as, and I did the analogy earlier, Brad and Pecco. I think 2 races for Pecco, and a complete reset is needed, because this year's done and dusted. He's lost the championship, first of all. He's lost the runner-up spot. He's going to have to ride his best 2 races of the year to beat Bezzecchi, to hold on to, or to gain third, because I think he's behind again in fourth. So it's going to be a difficult couple of weeks for him. And then, reset, do the test on the day after the last race, and then go away, go on holiday, reset, come back with a complete new attitude, and see how that takes him. But we said that, after the summer break, Pecco, you got to reset. And he just couldn't manage to do it.
Let's wait and see what Pecco rocks up to Portimao. We're going to get onto Alex Marquez, because he does deserve his time in the spotlight. John Kotsea's got a question here. Can Alex opt to stay on the 24 with a few upgrades next year instead of the 26 that who knows will be good? So it's a very good question, John, because Ducati have got these bikes that work. We know not a lot of development can be done, certainly in terms of engine, because the engine's frozen for next season, heading into 2027. And so far from the testing that I've seen that Ducati have done, it's very much aerodynamics. I think a lot of guys are going aero. I know Michele Pira, I think, was testing a completely new design front kind of aero package on the Ducati. It's a tricky one, because other than Yamaha potentially with the V4 and Honda, how their concessions are going to go for next year. And I can't see many big changes happening. So I can't see a situation like we saw this year where Mark went, the lap records were broken Phillip Island by a second and the race times were beaten by 30 seconds and whatever. I don't think we're going to see much of that next year. I think we'll see slight improvements, maybe with tire or track conditions on certain days and whatever. I mean, if I was an Alex Marquez, I'd probably be saying, just, refresh the bike and give me the same bike, because it's what's rekindled my career and led me to second in the World Championship, which, when you're finishing second to Marc Marquez, is literally a case of you're the first. You're actually the winner, because Mark's, like Alex says, he kind of counts Mark out of it. I've won the championship here because Mark doesn't exist in my world, So it's a good question, and I don't know what everyone else's thoughts are, but I don't know how Ducati are going to play that. What can the GP26 really be, or do they want to make the same mistake as where they tried to improve, something and it backfired in many ways this year? So is it a case of, if it ain't broken, don't fix it, that old saying, whatever it is?
Yeah. But then what do they do, Rob? Do they revert back to the 2024 as their base? Because clearly the 2025, Mark has made it work, and Digi on occasion. Pecco certainly not. So what do they do? And now with Mark not being at the test in Valencia, are they going to go with what Pecco recommends? Are they going to listen to Digi? What are they going to do? So I think Ducati are in a little bit of a quandrum at the moment, because the problem is the next test in February doesn't give them much time to change stuff before the first race. So it's going to be a little bit of a situation. Obviously, if Alex has any input and any say, he's going to say, I'm happy with this package. Let's, if you got one or two things for me to try, let's try them. But, as you say, Rob, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So be interesting to see. And if that's the case, does Pecco say, okay, well, put me on the 2024 bike and, let's call it a 26 and off we go. C'est la vie, and Mark can do whatever he wants. He can ride whatever he feels like, and I don't actually care. So I think Ducati have got a bit of a dilemma, because their number one rider is not going to be there. Their number two, their factory rider, is maybe in a difficult situation team-wise, mentally, and a guy who should never have finished second in the championship is now going to be their main port of call for their testing and kind of setting the benchmark for 2026. So it'll be interesting, very interesting. But certainly Alex would say, just leave me as am, and I'll be quite happy with the package that I've got.
As Wayne Taylor says, Alex has already been told that he'll be on the latest spec bike for next year, so I don't think he can opt to keep the 24 bike. So imagine, well done, Alex, second in the World Championship. Your career's made awesome, but he has Pecco's bike from this year.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Try and make that work. And listen, if that happens, imagine the exercise. Alex Marquez climbs in it and is just as fast as he was on a GP24 and makes it work. That's another kick in Pecco's teeth. That these are all the kind of things that your mind can run away with in this kind of situation. But speaking of Alex Marquez, and just as much praise that you need to give Alex Marquez needs to go to that Gresini team, because look what they did for Marc Marquez. Kind of gave him a home to go win his 9th world title, gave a home to Digi to become a MotoGP race winner, and Aya Bastianini to become a race winner, and a factory Ducati rider, and then Fermin Aldeguer to kick off his MotoGP career, Rookie of the Year, Independent Team of the Year, Independent Rider of the Year, and second in the World Championship.
Yeah, and 4 wins for the year.
And 4 wins for the year from this not factory supported team at all, other than Fermin Aldeguer getting his salary paid by Ducati.
Yeah,
that's about it. They lease the bikes, they buy the bikes, they do whatever they do. So massive congrats to them. They've just created this environment, and anyone that's been lucky enough to go to a MotoGP and get into the paddock and spend time in any of the hospitalities, of course, like the Red Bulls and the HRCs, and I've been into the Alpine Stars and the Ducatis, luckily enough, they're tip top, and it's just the bee's knees. Gresini just get it right with how they do it, because it's got that posh glamour side, but it's also got this come in here and just be who you are and be comfortable. And they've got these over-tanned Brits there with their, their sunglasses tan, with their pints in their hands and singing all kinds of. It's just this great atmosphere, and even the people involved with the team. It's a fantastic environment to be in, and that's allowed the likes of Alex Marquez to go and shine. Because take nothing away from Alex Marquez this year. I know people will always be critical and say, "Oh, yeah, but he's Spanish and he gets this." And no. I don't think any of these things apply to Alex Marquez this year. I think Alex Marquez deserves every single bit of credit that he gets, because he had a lot, including from us, of pressure on his back. The Marquez name alone comes with the pressure that it comes with. And for him to go and do what he did this year, the real Alex Marquez, the Alex Marquez that I was saying should be there to deserve that ride, came out and played this year. And nothing but massive congratulations to him. To finish second in the World Championship with the depth of riders that we have this year is phenomenal. And well done to the Marquez brothers. First ever time that a brothers have finished 1 and 2 in the highest form of motorcycle racing ever. So what an achievement for the whole family. What a year for the Marquez family this year.
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. And as we said at the beginning of the year, Alex Marquez, Frankie Morbidelli and Jack Miller need to earn their rides. And they all had moments of brilliance. But Alex, the first race, second race, second, third race, second, fourth race. And I mean, they were calling him Mr. Second. And we kept saying, when's this going to end? When's this going to end? Then he won. Then, so absolutely a fantastic year for him. He certainly earned all the praises that have been bestowed upon him. And I think he shot down a lot of his doubters. And there were many of them. And me personally, I was like, yeah, he's very lucky his surname is Marquez. Take nothing away before, people shoot him down and say he didn't deserve it. He's a 2-time world champion, so he's got the pedigree. But did he get as far as he did? Because part of his pedigree is a 9 times world champion who he grew up. Yeah, so there was always that little bit of a, and I think people might have felt the same when Darren Binder got his ride with Petronas, to say, but it's because of Brad. Garbage. He earned it. So I think going back to Alex, he's really earned it. He's deserved it. He's come to the party. Absolutely. So, let's see how next year goes for him. Now he's got pressure. I don't think he had any pressure this year, because Mark was expected to do well. Pecco was expected to do well. Bezecchi, Martin, not Alex. Alex was, everyone thought, Alex, you run 6, 7, 8. You've had a great year. Now he's outperformed everybody's expectations, possibly not his own, but everybody else's. And now he's got pressure. So next year, and we said it many times, he used to go to races and say, well, let Mark win. I want to be second. Now he's got to change his thinking and say, no, when I line up on that grid, not Mark's faster than me, I'm going to beat Mark. So that's the improvement he's got to make. And that's going to be his challenge. So, and that's all he has to change. Nothing else needs to change for Alex Marquez, except the fact he's got to have more self-belief that he can race his brother. I'm not going to say he's going to say, well, I'll go out there and beat him. I don't want to say he had a defeatist attitude this year towards Mark. He had a realist attitude. Next year, he's got to say, no, but I was second. I won 3 races. I'm here. I deserve it. I belong. I'm the man. So let's see how it goes. Mentally, he's going to have I think it's going to be harder for him next year.
I fully agree with you with next year. There's a whole different complex to this now of pressure. And you want to be one of the men now? Let's see if you want to be. We've always said, and I've always said, what separates the greats from the truly great is how you back it up. There's been so many riders in the past, Joan Mir being one, Jorge Martin now, where you've pulled off an amazing season and you've won it. Great. But how do you back that up? Danny Pedrosa is one of the greats because of the fact that, okay, he didn't win a MotoGP world title, but he was always in the running. He would go from second, the next season, second or third. He was always in contention for it. He never just had a good season, then dropped off and then came back. And, none of that. And that's why he's one of the greats. Casey Stoner was always at that level. And that's what Mark Marquez and Rossi, that's why it's put them at the pinnacle of the sport, because they're just able to do it year in and year out. So Alex Marquez, hats off, brilliant, well done. Next year is going to be your true test, because now, as you said, you're going into a season as your name being put on that board as one of the guys that we're all watching, that You have to compete. You have to. If you don't finish at least top 3, it's not a good season now, because your benchmark is second. That's what it is. And I do agree with you that I think his biggest limitation now is when Mark's there and when he's battling Mark. There's this hesitancy with Mark. And I don't know if it's just a brotherly love thing of, I know what my brother's been through. I want him to go win number 10. And I don't want to be the guy in his way. Or it's just no, that's my big brother. Like, he's just too good. I can't. I don't know if it's which one of those it actually is. But he certainly put himself as one of the greats this season. But to be one of the greats now, it's right. How are you going to handle this pressure, and how are you going to handle the change of if you do get a Pecco bike from this year, and right, it's not the bike that you wanted. How are you going to deal with that? Are you going to be able to make it work? Are you going to, or are you going to slip back to the Alex that finishes 6th and 7th with the odd good performance? There's a lot of questions that need to be answered. But for now, he can bask in the ambience of the success that him and his team deservedly got this year. He went under the radar. As you said, he was nowhere near one of the names. If you had said to me at the beginning of the year, Alex Marquez would finish 2nd in the world title with the amount of points that he has, closest rival to Mark, destroying Pecco and every other Ducati rider, I would have said, you're dreaming. You're absolutely dreaming. But there he is, and much credit to him. And let's see. Obviously, we want him to be competitive next year, because the more competitive riders we have, the better for the championship. But the ball is very much in his and Cressini's court now, because same with Cressini. You're one of the big boys now, I know there was talk potentially, and Oli Moto or anyone in the comments, you're all pretty clued up when it comes to this. There was talk that, right, I think it was announced that Alex is not going to get a full factory Ducati ride. He didn't want it, but he is getting factory contract and support. Am I right in saying that?
I don't know about that. I've heard nothing. As far as I know, it's only Aldegear that gets Aldegear, and obviously Digi or Ducati riders. I don't know about Alex. It might change if he's on a 2-year deal, which would be this year, next year. I can't see that happening unless it was already in place. But I don't remember reading, seeing, hearing anything about that.
Yeah, I think it was announced a couple of rounds ago that Alex would get a factory Ducati bike. Ducati were making, because I was worried they were going to take it from Digi. Yeah, bike. Yeah, I was worried they were going to take Digi's factory Ducati contract from VR46 with everything that's happened there now, and hand it over to Alex and Cressini, because they're not putting their nose in it a little bit like the VR46 team are. But yeah, if anyone.
I think a little bit of pressure that Alex is going to feel is the fact that, he's the next best Ducati rider. He's on a Ducati once again. So his excuses are limited. I do think that that's why I feel next year is going to be a really challenging year for him. I think this year he's taken everything in his stride. He's never looked flustered. He's had 1 or 2 cuck weekends, which were, if he didn't crash, his cuck weekends were 6th and 7th, but he just seems like a more mature Alex, where he's just taken it in his stride. He hasn't got all big-headed about it. He hasn't got arrogant about it from what you see when they chat to him. I wish he'd just slow his English down a little bit, but I mean, it's not his first language. But when he is interviewed, when they do talk to him and ask him questions that are a little bit more than just, how was your race? He just seems to, that's how it was. He's got no, I'm going to say airs and graces, wrong word, but he just, as I say, he seems to have taken it in his stride. Next year, these results are done and dusted. It's in the history books. To maintain this level, he's going to have to up his game. There's no doubt, because now he's the target. As we discussed and agreed, beginning of this year, he wasn't a target, not at all. Those first 3 races, second, that's luck. Now he's shown he's got the consistency, he's got the speed, he hasn't looked out of shape. He actually looks like the smoothest Ducati rider out there. So next year he's got to fulfill this. And as you say, don't do it once, do it again. Yes, he's done it many times this year, but now he's got a whole season to redress this again next year. I think it's going to be very interesting, but I certainly think it's going to be more pressure for him.
What? I mean, from my side, certainly, I'm going to be watching with a keen eye. Alex Marquez a bit more. This year, like I said, the second, you were like, okay, cool. But then it started coming undone a little bit, and you were like, yeah, and then he brought it back. So you kind of watched him, but you weren't fully watching him. Whereas next year, you're going to be like, okay, Alex, now what? okay, Alex, you know what? And the pressure, okay, Wayne Taylor and Javi Lowe have confirmed that it is a factory bike that he's being supplied. So Ducati will have 4 factory bikes on the grid next year, but he'll still be under a Cressini contract. There's pressure that comes with that now because it's cool. Same pressure that Pecco and Digi deal with this year. If you get beaten by the old spec bike, you're a knob cheese because you've been beaten by an older bike. So he's got to deal with that. So I think there's going to be a bit more of a microscope over Alex now, which, how you deal with that. This year, he did. He turned me into a fan. I loved how he conducted himself in many ways. And I loved the whole Alex Marquez exercise this year. But it's easier to do that when you're in that comfortable environment and everyone's looking there, and now everyone's looking at you. Now, cool. That's going to be when we see the real Alex Marquez and where he really is in terms of where he fits in the MotoGP kind of ecosystem of all-time greats or whatever. So interesting to see. But again, hats off and well done to him for the season. It was a great season. Paul, looking quickly back at Moto 2. I don't know if you caught any of the Moto 2, but that's turning into that's the one to watch now with the last couple. Manu Gonzalez at one point was 60-something points ahead. And we spoke about it last week, how the seasons have unfolded for the 2 riders since the break. Gonzalez went testing a MotoGP bike, did very well, was almost certain to go to MotoGP, was snubbed. That's really kicked him in the teeth, and we've just seen him kind of spiral down this slope. Moreira didn't start the season off well, was finding his feet, kind of found a bit of rhythm. MotoGP talk, signed the LCR deal, I think, obviously a lot longer ago than was announced, but buzzing, and you can just see the difference in performance. Now leading the World Championship. I mean, Manu Gonzalez, I don't know. There's Diego Moreira qualifying in 16th or something. You're second row. It's there for the taking. You're in prime position, 3 laps or whatever to go, and you tuck the front and you lose it. And I didn't see this coming from Manu Gonzalez. I thought he was a lot stronger. I always looked at him as a mentally strong, rider. He's portrayed that throughout this whole season, but the wheels are falling off, and it's in Diego Moreira's hands now. And looking at past, I know at Portimao, it's a track that both of them go well at. And Valencia, it's back to Europe, so it's European riders. Okay, Gonzalez is Brazilian, but he grew up pretty much in Europe. So anyway, all to play for, and that's going to be the one. That's going to be the championship to watch.
Yeah, most certainly, and exactly what you say. When he dumped it with 3 laps to go, I mean, the commentators, I know we get a different feed to you. They were like, "What are you doing?" And Moreira is just taking it in his stride, as you say. Qualified 16th, then they had the red flag. I think he had worked his way up to 9th by then. Didn't worry him. Now he's got a shortened race. He just got on with what he had to do. He's now racing himself to win the championship, as opposed to Gonzalez is racing Moreira. So his mind is elsewhere. That's what I would anticipate, or how I would analyze it, is that he's now, where the first half of the year he was racing himself, got in front, pulled a gap, won the race. Now he's too worried about where Moreira is, even though he was 8 places behind him on the grid. And he's lost that focus, that little bit of that. I'm going to say it's a killer instinct. It's that, like we discussed, Rob, this is such fine lines, and now 1% of his concentration is worrying about his arch enemy, and that's taking the focus, and that's causing those little mistakes. So it's going to be very interesting. So certainly next week or 2 weeks' time and the week thereafter are going to be absolutely do or die for both of them. Neither of them can now afford a mistake. That's the bottom line, because I think there's 7 or 9 points in it. So, you've got to qualify well, and you've got to race well. Your margin for error is 0. So it's going to be fantastic to watch.
And you got to do all this while you got the likes of the rookies, Holgado and Alonso, and all these guys in the mix. And we couldn't care about the championship. We want to win races and do everything.
Yeah, so exactly.
Moto2 really has stepped up this year, and it's been a fantastic championship to watch. And I'm really excited for the last 2 rounds. Manny's bike seems to lack consistency. This is a good comment because it actually brings up Manny's bike seems to lack consistency, even looking at Senna Age's performance shifts week to week. And Yaku does. Brilliant comment, because you've just refreshed my mind on what I was thinking about watching it on Sunday, Paul. And this is where the difference a team can make. And again, no disrespect to the intact team, but you look at that what is it called? Italtrans team that Diego Moreira's on. They've done it more recently with Bastianini. in Moto2. I know geez, now I'm forgetting both names. Intax team had done it a long time ago. Tom Lutien. They've been a very competitive team for a long time. They did seem to kind of lose their way a little bit, but they've come back this year. And I fully agree with Jaco Dus. It's like, Senna Aegis dominates in Phillip Island, and whatever buzz. But I think it was Silverstone as well. He did really well at. And then there's races where you forget he's even there and how competitive this guy actually is. Gonzalez has managed to keep that consistency, but you talk about Gonzalez maybe losing his head and the pressure of it all. The same applies for the team. The team now start looking and analyzing things that are tighten this bolt, that I do this and this.
Yeah.
And the team can make the difference. And could it be where this Italtrans is just like, we've been there, we've done it, we know how to win these championships. So Moreira, don't worry, we're handling this a lot better than the Intact team. So there's all those kind of things that you play in, because I agree with that kind of comment. It's there for everyone to see. Moreira has just had this much more consistent run. Even Adrian Huerta has found a bit of form. His teammate, the World Supersport champion in his first year in Moto2, has been a bit more consistently better. Okay, it's not better results, but better in terms of consistency where he's finishing. Where Senna Aegis and Gonzalez is like, Gonzalez at one stage was, you couldn't touch the guy. And now it's just this yo-yo effect. So just shows you the impact a team can have. We always focus on the rider, but there's also the team that you've got to look at.
Yeah, Rob, most certainly. And we've discussed it with MotoGP teams specifically last year. I was quite harsh on Aprilia because I felt management dropped the ball when Maverick, and it seemed like Alasia just given up. Yeah. Now it's up to the team manager to step in and control Gonzalez. Remember, we discussed it 2 years ago when Martin put the soft or whatever he did at Australia, different to everyone else. Don't make those decisions. Don't allow the rider to do anything. He needs to now focus on what he has to do to beat Moreira. That's it. That must be their sole focus, and they need to nurture him and guide him. I mean, these are youngsters. The maturer people in the team need to make sure that focus remains where it needs to stay. Don't worry about, if Moreira's 10 places behind you on the grid, don't worry if he's past two people. Do your race. So very easy for us to sit here and say that, but certainly do the team management think about that, because they're making sure, let's try this on the bike. To get that, they want that little bit of an advantage. But don't forget to mollycoddle your rider into the situation where he's mentally in the right frame of mind. Very difficult to manage, but they certainly, both sides of the equation, Italtrans and Intact, need to now manage their riders to win a championship. That's their goal. So yeah, they need to adjust focus a little bit, or refocus, or whatever it is, to make sure that for 2 weekends, all you concentrate is getting the best out of you and your bike. That's it. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. It's going to be a great race to the wire, presuming Gonzalez doesn't crash in Portimao, because then it could be done, eh?
Done and dusted, exactly. Peter Ward, any news for Daz for next year? Moving on to Darren. Didn't quite back up Sepang, the way I was hoping to, from Phillip Island, which was a strong showing in qualifying. Certainly didn't quite get the the Sunday race result. Sepang was again trying and hard and difficult, although there was still a little bit more positive. Didn't end well with the coming together with Sasaki and then crashing out with Munoz, and then they couldn't get the bike ready in time. Unfortunately, couldn't remount and get going again. But from the inside, what I've heard is still that niggling arm injury that's hampering Darren. Apparently this week could be potentially going in to Barcelona to have it looked at and see which direction to go. A case of, whatever the doctor kind of recommends, because it certainly has been hampering. It really has just been a thorn in his side. As for next season, the question remains. Someone mentioned earlier, BSB, Moto America seem to be the two biggest championships being mentioned. No kind of talk of World Supersport or World Superbike or anything, or certainly Moto2. So time will tell. I have no other information than what you guys are hearing and seeing. So let's wait and see. As we said, we've spoken about it many times. Let's hope Darren can get himself 100% fit, and then in a good ride for next year to hopefully rebuild and find himself in a competitive team in a world championship and be competitive again and be the competitive Darren we know he can and should be.
Yeah, that's all we can hope for, because we know that it seems like the MotoGP door is closed for him. So hopefully he gets a good ride somewhere, and a team that deserves him, and a team that will be appreciative of his abilities. And let's see where it goes. But I agree, Rob. I've also been looking out, and the wires are very quiet.
Yeah, extremely quiet. Rushay Woodley in Moto3, South African, had a good weekend, was having a really good weekend. Didn't quite pull off the result at the end of the day. But again, good school of hard knock session for Rushay Woodley to race in those conditions on Sunday. There's going to be plenty more race weekends like that for him. The fact that he brought the bike home, finished, unlike his teammate again. Good job. It's we've spoken about. It's all about the experience. The results. I know he'll be looking at that and being very disappointed with himself. We're looking at going, we want a little bit more. The reality is, it's a learning year in one of. I mean, that Moto3 is just ridiculous. Every time I watch it, it's just, as you said, Paul, from day one, if you're watching it for the first time, pull a name out of the hat and you can go with it, because that's the quality in that field. And Rushay Woodley's doing a good job for a rookie, and not injuring himself, getting those experience points, heading back into Europe now, where hopefully he can just push on now and get closer to the top 15 and get some points.
Yeah. And Rob, I know they didn't show his race at all. It would have been interesting to see, because I think with a lap to go, he had moved himself up to 16th. So I don't know if he made a mistake and dropped back to 20th, or were there 5, 6, 7 of them having a proper dice, and he got, all it takes is one shoulder barge out of corner. So it would have been interesting to see. Yes, I know they show the race, and the racing at the front was good, but we didn't get to see what happened to him, because I was like, hey, 16th, he had moved like 18, 17, 16. I thought one more and he's in the points, and next thing he was 20th. So either he made a mistake, or they were having a fantastic race, which is what you want. As a racer, yes, you want to get in the points you want. But if you've had a great race and everything went well, you're going to leave the circuit saying, well, that was fantastic. I'm looking forward to the next one. And hopefully that was the situation with him.
I actually meant to message Arushan yesterday asking, what has he signed a deal or whatever, and I just haven't got around to it. So hopefully by the next show, I'll have an answer to this question from Yakudas. This question, is Rushay confirmed for 2026 yet? But as Johnny Martin says here, I believe he got a contract extension with the team. I haven't heard any confirmation, but I do think that is going to happen. But I'll try and get confirmation from Arushan or Rushay or someone by the time Portimao rocks up in 2 weeks' time, and we're talking MotoGP Portimao. So again, thank you everyone for the brilliant conversation, the brilliant insight, the brilliant comments. As always, it's been fantastic, Paul. Again, another fantastic weekend of MotoGP racing with lots to talk about. We're going to have a week off now, and then it's crunch time. 2 more rounds. I can't believe this. 2 more rounds. This championship.
Can you believe it?
Feels like we started talking MotoGP, a couple of weeks ago, and now we're talking about the final 2 rounds. So exciting times, especially in the Moto2 World Championship. But until then, everyone have a great couple of weeks. Paulie, have a great couple of weeks, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. That was awesome. To everyone who tuned in and listened to us waffling on, thanks once again. And we'll chat to you in a couple of weeks' time.
Goodbye, everybody.
Cheers.